Hi, Jennifer and Keith. I'm here at the Princeton Children's Book Festival with Wendell Minor, and Wendell's going to tell us the 5 top tips for an illustrator who's working with a writer. Hello, Wendell.
How are you? And I'm sure there are far more than 5. But number 1, working with a writer, I like to break all the rules and actually get to know the writer and have their input, because I think that's very important, is to understand what the writer has in mind and really just work to that end, just so that you come together as co-collaborators and create a better book that way, I believe.
That's fantastic. What would another tip be?
Well, I think when I worked with Jean Craighead George, we did 22 books in 18 years.
Wow.
And Jean and I would talk about ideas initially of what we were going to do next. And when we finished our book Everglades, she said, "We're going to the Arctic." And so we started talking about what we could do about stories about polar bears. And then I would go to Jean's house and we'd actually sit down and I would sketch. She would write, show me the manuscript, and I would do sketches with her. And we would begin to form the book that way. It's a process that I've always really enjoyed, and I think really it does make for a better book.
So collaboration is very important.
I believe it is. Some publishers feel that authors and illustrators should never meet, but I've always broken that rule.
Can you give us a third tip?
Third tip is to know your material, to do your research. If you're doing a book on penguins, you have to learn all about penguins. If it's about bears, I did a book with Jean George on Galapagos George the tortoise. I read a lot of background material. I do a lot of photo research. I go to the place whenever I can and understand what the environment is and the creatures that I'm painting. That is something that I owe the child. I want them to realize that when I paint something, it's accurate and they should know it as well as I mean for them to know it.
So research, research, research.
Absolutely. And like drawing, draw, draw, and draw some more. You can never be good enough. You're always practicing. You're always trying to get better. And I'm on my 55th book, and I'm still trying to learn how to paint, frankly.
I doubt that. But number 4?
Number 4, I think to follow through. I always like to keep my editors apprised of the progress of my book. And I don't have any problem with emailing each piece as I finish it so that they can see it, they see the progress, and also if there's anything wrong with that particular painting, I'll know about it right away and I can correct it right away. So when I deliver a complete book, there are no changes. And I've been very lucky in that regard.
That sounds pretty rare. Now, what is your final tip?
I think the final step is when you do your presentations, your complete book. Now, I'm a book designer too. So I present a complete book from cover to cover, title page to the copyright page. But have a comprehensive dummy that has no doubt that it's what your intentions are. If you do a scribble dummy and all of a sudden you do a finished painting that doesn't look like what the editor had in mind or the art director had in mind, then the separation of those 2 points create problems. So I like to do very tight tonal studies so that there's no question about what my intentions are, and I don't think I've had more than 3 changes in 55 books.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it's a question of always assuming for yourself that you should do everything you possibly can do to make things clear and simple, and making your editor and your author's job much simpler that way.
I learned a lot. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.